Today's Daf Yomi is Menachos 42a. So we're going to start on 42a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 lines from the top. Tana Rabbanon ain't tzitzis. What does the word tzitzis mean? Ela anaf. It means a string. As it says, it says in Ezekiel, Vaikacheni bat tzitzis roshi. It took me by like the strands of my hair. It needs to be separated like the tzitzis of the Arameans, which Rashi tells us was in the base at the bottom, it was held together, and then it was stringy at the top. Like they used to have like certain haircuts like that, you see. Tana Rabbanon, Hitio ala Karen. Let's say you put the tzitzis directly on the corner, or al gadil. Rashi says the gadil is the thick piece of wool that's on the corner, kashira. Now, according to the Brisa, that if the tzitzis was directly on the corner and not separated from the corner, it'd still be kashira. We're on 42a, see. Whereas Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov posel b'shteim. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov said it's disqualified in both of those cases because Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says it needs to be separated, distanced from the corner. Like whom does it say that Rav Gidel said, tzitzis tzricha sheteinu tefes al keren, that the tzitzis needs to be banging against the corner. Like whom is that? So that shenemar al kamfevig deyan. Come on, who's that like? That's like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says that the tzitzis can't be on the corner, it needs to be away from the corner, and then it'll be banging on the corner. It needs to be a few finger breadths off the corner. Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, meaning it hits against the corner because it's attached a little bit off of the corner, so therefore the string hits against the corner. If it would be attached to the corner, then it wouldn't be banging against the corner. So Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, mitzarch sheyarchik melo kesher godel. You need to distance the tzitzis from the corner, the distance of a kesher godel. Rashi says this is like from the thumb up until the first joint. That's what needs to of the thumb. Itzrach to Rav Papa, Itzrach to Rabbi Yaakov. And so now we have this teaching of Rabbi Yaakov that it needs to be at least a finger breadth distant from the corner. I mean, at least a joint distant. And yesterday we have Rav Papa that it needs to be within 3 fingers of the corner. So we need both of those teachings. The imi to Rav Papa, because if it was just from Rav Papa, Avamina Tochkim or the Lerchak Fei. Now, within 3 tvachim, you can't be more distant. The kama de mekari maui, but the closer you get to the corner, the better. And so that's what we would have thought. So it's just the Rabbi Yaakov. So we need Rabbi Yaakov needs to say it can't be directly flush against the corner. Mimi de Rabbi Yaakov, and if we had Rabbi Yaakov's teaching, havamina melo kesher godel, melo ikar tfei, I would have said, okay, you can't make it closer than a finger, than the thumb up until the joint. But the farther it is away from the corner, the better. So so it has to be from the finger joint all the way until 3 fingers, and that's it. Ravina and Rav Sama, Vayasvi Kamed Rav Ashi. So Ravina and Rav Sama were sitting in front of Rav Ashi. Chazi Rav Sama lekarne de glima de Ravina. So Rav Sama saw the corner of Ravina's garment, desata arubatzer, that it was mimlo kasher godol, that it tore, and now it was closer to the corner than this thumb up until the joint. Don't you agree with what Rabbi Yaakov said? He said to Ravina that it has to be at least till the joint away from the corner. No, that's only when you're making it. Like we saw a similar law with the stubs, with the garmudin. So that's only when you're making it. But if it tears a little, it doesn't disqualify it. So when Rav Sama heard this from Ravina, he was embarrassed. Don't be too embarrassed. One of them is like 2 of us. Rashi said because Ravina was from Israel. The problem is, as we said yesterday, that there's no other source that says Ravina was from Eretz Israel. Ravina seems to have been completely a Babylonian. In fact, the other sources seem to say he was a Babylonian. So some change the gear source. Some say refers to he was from a different city within Babylon. Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Rami Dawid, va'ayef hu mi'ayef, u'ma'ayel beglima, va'avakluhu mevak. Kasavar ba'inan tamaya beglima, ki'echad ave gedil gedilim b'makom psil. So what would he do? He would, before you put the 4 strings in, he would fold them over and then put them through and then make a knot in the loop so that it would be the braid when it was passed through. That's what he required. Rav Yirmiyah Midifti Rami Tamanya. Rav Yirmiyah Midifti put in 8 strings. The Inu Shitzar, when he folded over, that became 16. Below Avakul, and he didn't make a knot. And Mar Bere Ravina Avid Kididan. So Mar, the son of Ravina. Wait 1 second. How is Ravina son of the Talmud if Ravina is the one who concluded the Talmud? So we see that there are some people who came later than Ravina Ravashi. The Mar Bere Ravina, he did it like us. What do we do? By the way, he did it like us. Who's us? If Mar Bere Ravina is the son of the one who wrote the Talmud, what does it mean us? So we do it 4 strings, we put them through, and then we fold them over. That's what most understand it. Rav Nachman Ashkei or Rav Adabar Ava. So now we're going to get a discussion about the bracha on tzitzis. Rav Nachman Ashkei or Rav Adabar Ava Rami Chuta v'kamavaracha so tzitzis. So he was putting on the strings on the garment, and while he's putting the strings on the garment, he made the bracha to make tzitzis. So that's what Rav Nachman saw Rav Adabar Ava doing. I'm like, my tzitzi shamani. He says, what is the tzitzi? What am I hearing? You make a bracha on making tzitzis. I never heard of such a thing. Hachi Amarav. Tzitzis ain't tzricha bracha. Rav Nachman said tzitzis don't require a bracha. Why are you making a bracha? Didn't Rav say the making of the tzitzis don't require a bracha? So kinach nafshe to Rav Huna. When Rav Huna died, all Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda, some say that this is Rav Chisda was becoming the Rosh Yeshiva. So this was his opening shir. All Rav Chisda Lamirma Derav Adarav. And I want to mention that this is the place. Why is it being included here? Because this is the only place in Shas where we discuss tzitzis. So this is the place. So when Rav Chisda, when Rav Huna died, Rav Chisda went up and he gave a shir, and as his like introductory lecture, he threw a contradiction of Rav against Rav. Mi Amar Rav tzitzis ain't tzricha bracha. Does Rav really say tzitzis don't require a blessing? Because they had this one teaching that Rav says that making tzitzis does not require a blessing. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav minayla tzitzis bo'ovi kochavim she'i psula. But we have a different statement of Rav that says that tzitzis that was made by an idolater is disqualified, as it says that Be'er b'nei Yisrael b'asuhem tzitzis. B'nei Yisrael yasu b'oa uvdei kochavim. The B'nei Yisrael can make tzitzis, but not the idolaters. So that's the contradiction with Rav. In the first case, Rav says, tzitzis, you don't make a blessing. And here he says, the idolaters can't make it. So how is this a contradiction? What's the connection between them? I should want to mention in passing that from here, many say that idolaters can't make it, but women can. This became a dispute between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, whether or not women can make the tzitzis. You can imagine they could spin the strings, etc., and make the tzitzis. And Sephardim say yes. The Ramah says not ideally, not, but only b'diavad. So the Gemara says, well, what's this contradiction? Well, my rumia, how is this a contradiction? One source, Rav says that idolaters cannot make it, and the other source he says you don't make the blessing. So they're not contradictory. Rav Yosef Kasav Rav Chisda. It's because Rav Chisda saw the position Kol mitzvah shekshira bo v'kochavim. Any mitzvah which an idolater could do, be Yisrael in tzarach avarach, that the Jew does not make a blessing. Kol mitzvah shepsua bo v'kochavim, but a mitzvah where idolater is disqualified, like this mitzvah of tzitzis, be Yisrael tzarach avarach. A Jew would need to make the blessing. And so in that approach, if Rav says an idolater cannot make it, then you should have to make the blessing when you make the tzitzis. So Gemara says, wait 1 second. Is this really an acceptable principle from Rav Chisda Uklalahu? Is this really a good rule? What about circumcision? The circumcision is kosher by an idolater. How do we know that idolater can do circumcision? Let's say there's no doctor, and this happens a lot of times. People far from places. There's no Jewish doctor. There's a non-Jewish doctor. Or there's a Jew who's, let's say, idolater. Better off to have the non-Jew do the circumcision, but not the Jew who's the idolater, because he could have the wrong intention. That's the very Rabbi Yehuda Kuti v'lo Armai. that the Kuti should do it and not the Aramean. So it's kosher by a non-Jew. Be Yisrael tzarich havarach, and even though the non-Jew does it, the Jew needs to make a blessing. So we see from here that when a non-Jew, that even though a non-Jew can do the circumcision, the Jew needs to make the blessing. So yes.
How can the non-Jew can't
So it's based upon the verse. So it's based upon a verse. And that's it. No, I mean, whenever there's a verse, it overrides the logic. So since there's a verse that says specifically in the verse, speak to the children of Israel and tell them to make the tzitzis, that excludes the idolaters. Even though it's based, yeah.
Why is it based on that style?
Oh, you're saying why is the style? It's not based upon them. When it referred to it earlier, it was just saying that this is what the word tzitzis means. This is the way one of the ways we understand what tzitzis, the word tzitzis means in Tanakh, because it's used there to mean strands. So but it's not. We're not basing it off of the way the idolaters did it. It was a good question. So the Gemara says. So anyway, back to our question. We see from here that even though there's a blessing made on circumcision, an idolater can do it. So according to Rav Chisda, there should be no blessing there. So the Gemara says, no. Midi utaime el Rav. Rav Chisda was explaining Rav. Rav mipsal pasul. Rav says that an idolater cannot do the circumcision. And so therefore, that's why we make the blessing. How do we know that circumcision when idolater is disqualified? So Daru bar Papa Mishmei the Rav. So Rav taught, but it's Brisita Shmur. You have to guard my covenant. A non-Jew cannot do it. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Himol Yimol. Hamal Yimol. Rabbi Yochanan says a different source, that only one who's circumcised can do the circumcision. So the Gemara says, so basically this contradicts. So the Gemara says, and now we have support for Rav Chisda's logic that if the idolater cannot do it, you make the blessing if you're a Jew, but if the idolater can do it, you don't make a blessing. And what's the proof for this? From Sukkah. Sukkah Messiah, Sukkah supports him, and Tefillin Aveti. But by Tefillin, it would be a refutation of Rav Chisda. How so? Hare Sukkah, because the making of a Sukkah, a non-Jew can build your Sukkah. Thank God for that, right? The Tanya Sukkahs Ovdi Kochavim, Sukkahs Nashim. We had this in Mesechah Sukkah. Sukkah can be made by an idolater or by women. Sukkahs Behema can even be made by an animal. Sukkahs Kutiyim, Sukkah Mikol Makom. In all these cases, if it was just an animal, you put tzlach on your elephant. All these cases is a kosher sukkah. As long as it's done properly. And there's no blessing. So we see from here something that the idolater can do. The Jew doesn't make the blessing. The Tanya always says sukkah atman, one who makes a sukkah for himself. Omer baruch atah Hashem okein v'cholam shechiyanu v'kimono v'gyanu azman hazeh. When you have the sukkah, you say shechiyanu. But when you come to sit in the sukkah, Omer baruch atah Hashem okein v'cholam asher kishalom tzanu v'tzivanu leishe b'sukkah. Make a blessing on sitting. There's no blessing on making the sukkah. There's not even a commandment to make a sukkah. A lot of times, people don't have sukkahs like here in the city. You use a communal sukkah. But tefillin is a tiyuvte. But so tefillin refutes what Rav Chisda taught. Tefillin, the psuas ba'ovdei kochavim. Tefillin is disqualified by the idolater. So according to Rav Chisda's logic, a Jew should make a blessing on the tefillin. The idolater cannot make the tefillin. The Tani Rav Chanina Blei de Rava on the top of 42b. Mi pasharnai. Sefer Torah tefillin mezuzah shekatzvan tzeduki kusi ovi kochavim isha v'katan mumar. Psuin. In all these cases, they cannot make the tefillin, as it says, "Ukshartem uksaftem." You shall bind it and write it. Kol sheyeshna mikshira yeshna miktiva. Whoever is in the mitzvah of putting on tefillin is able to write it. Kol she'ena b'kshira ena b'ksiva. Whoever is not in the binding cannot write it. Will be Yisrael ein tzarich levarach. So tefillin, even though an idolater cannot do it, a Jew doesn't make the blessing. So it's a refutation of Rav Chisda. And how do we know there's no blessing? The Shach Rav Chia Berei Rav Huna Mishmei Rav Yochanan Al Tefillin Shal Yad. We already had this earlier in our We had this earlier in our track, like a week ago. Al tefillin shel yad, on the hand tefillin, you say Baruch Asher Kishanim Sivanu Laniel tefillin. On the hand tefillin, you say I'm putting on tefillin. Al tefillin shel rosh, I'm a Baruch Asher Kishanim Sivanu. Al mitzvahs tefillin. Vilu asos tefillin, but to make the tefillin, well mevarech. You don't make a blessing on making tefillin. So therefore, we see that the tefillin refutes Rav Chisda because the non-Jew cannot make the tefillin and there's no blessing. So therefore, we're going to say that what's the reason why, if there's a mitzvah like tzitzis, you don't make a blessing on them? Says so. What's the reason? The Gemara says, Ella, the reasoning why you don't make a blessing on mitzvah like tzitzis and also on tefillin is because of the following. Ella hainu taima kol mitzvah dasiyasa gemar mitzvah. Any mitzvah where the doing of the mitzvah is the completion of the mitzvah. Could go mila, like circumcision. By doing the circumcision, you've completed the mitzvah. Then even though it'll be okay for an idolater to do, the Jew needs to make the blessing. We call mitzvah mitzvah, but any mitzvah where by doing it, you're not completing the mitzvah, i.e., the tefillin and the sukkah, going to tefillin, afagav the psuas, even though it's disqualified for an idolater, b'Yisrael in baruch. And by a Jew, they don't need to make the blessing. But tzitzis ba'alka miflagi, and this goes back to the tzitzis. What's the dispute? It's our old friend, which we had yesterday's stuff. Mar Savar, the one who says that you need to make the blessing, he says chovas tawasu. He says an obligation on the tawas, on the garment, and so therefore, once it's done, it's the mitzvah, and that's why Rav Chisda says it's an obligation on the tawas, and therefore, once you put the tzitzis on, you need to make the blessing. Mar Savar, whereas Rav Nachman's other position, chovas gavrahu. It's a obligation on the person, and so therefore, you don't make the bracha when you make it. You had a question, Bill? Okay. So the Gemara says a different version of this whole discussion. We learn it like this. Have a good day, Yossi. We learn it like this. How do we learn it? How do we know that tzitzis by an idolater is that a tzitzis an idolater makes it kosher? Because it's the Ber b'nei Yisrael v'asua em tzitzis, yasua em achirim. So therefore, we have a different version of this, and it says that the idolaters can make it because it says Yasua Macherim, and so therefore, that's why the Jew doesn't make the blessing on them, because the idolater can in fact make it, and anything where it's kosher by the idolater to make, the Jew doesn't make the blessing. And now the Gemara says, V'asulahem, they shall make for them. Who's them? Others can make for them the tzitzit. So now the Gemara says, Amar Ravi. That's how this version. Amar, even a non-Jew. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Alsan Menachotzim, if you make the tzitzis from like the strings from like thorns, meaning to say, not actually thorns, but like stuffed threads coming out from the garment, Minanimin, or from the edge of the garment, Minagarden, like the stubs or psua. This case is disqualified because it has to be, you have to make it, it can't be made on its own. Minasisin, from like a spool of thread, kishera, it's kosher, because then you put them on, you put them on the garment for the purpose of tzitzis, and the spinning doesn't need to be done for the purpose of tzitzis, according to this approach. He says, no, also the spinning needs to be done for the purpose of tzitzis. So it's disqualified if you just took a spool of thread. But the ba'inan taviyah lishma, we need to do the taviyah, the spinning, for the purpose of tzitzis. So Kitanai, this is a Machokas Tanaim. This Rav Shmuel says the spinning of the, you know what spinning is? You know what spinning is? When you take the wool, you get the tufts of wool, and then you just go like this. You spin it until it turns into string. Kitanai, hopefully they have machines that do that today. Sipin Zahav. So this is the dispute between Rav and Shmuel if the spinning of the string needs to be lishma. That's dependent upon a Machokas Tanaim. all with respect to tefillin, if the tanning, which is we called ibud, if that needs to be done with shema. When we said tzipin zav, if you covered over the tefillin, meaning you say you make the compartments of the tefillin out of gold, ushet tola alein orbe matmeo, or if you put on top of the tefillin, you made the batim, the compartments from a non-kosher animal. Pesuos, the tefillin are disqualified. Gold tefillin are disqualified, just so you know. Or what? Or behemoth tahor, but if you use the skin of a kosher animal, ksheros, afal pishlo idon lishma, even though it wasn't prepared lishma. Whereas Rabbi Shimon Gamliel taught, af or behemoth tahora, pesua, even the skin of a kosher animal is disqualified. So it's a fundamental dispute whether the preparatory act to making it needs to be done with the right intent. Like by tzitzis, that's the spinning, and by the tanning, by the tefillin, that's the tanning. So now, Gemara brings how we prepare the dye of the tefillin. We're going to get more into this in the next couple of days. But Amalei Abaye or Rab Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, hot chelta heichot savitue. How do they prepare the tchelas? So Amalei my sinan dam chilazon. They brought the blood of a snail. We know on Dav Mem Dalad we're going to say what this chilazon is. Misamanin, and you put in certain spices. Excuse me, you stick it into a pot, and we boil it up, and then you take a little bit of the dye and you put it into an egg to check whether it's the proper dough, into an eggshell, and and you basically we mix it with some a piece of wool, and then shadina le'ubiasa, and then we put this piece of wool into the dye. Vikalina le'udra, and then we burn it when it's done. Shmas minat plus. We learned from this three things. Shmas minat ti'ima psula, that the part that used for checking, that's not kosher for tzitzis because it wasn't done with the intent. Tosfos discusses what if you have both intent, and that's also no good. If you have the intent for tzitzis and for checking, it's still no good. Shmas minat deva'inan tzivil lishma. The dyeing needs to be done lishma. And shmas minat the ima pasla, that this part which was not done properly, if we would then put it back in, it would disqualify the rest. Gemara says, wait 1 second. The first two are the same. Hainu te'ima psula, hainu tzivil lishma. The first two are the same. Te'ima is disqualified, and the dyeing needs to be done with the right intent. Amar Avashi, no, matam kamar, matam te'ima psula. What's the reason why te'ima is disqualified? Mishum deba'inan tzvil ishma, because we require the dyeing for the right purpose. Kitanai, and this law, whether or not the dyeing that you used became disqualified and will disqualify others. Tama pasla, is it really the case that the reason why it's disqualified is because it was added in? Mishum shenemar kuyot techela. So if you add in this dye, it will make it disqualified because it all has to be with the proper intent. Even after you use it for dyeing, if it was left over, it will be kosher after the test because it says shni toat, and the word shni can also be the secondary, meaning to say that also the dye that the secondary use of it will also be kosher. Tanrabanan techelas einla bedika. Techelas you can't check. Okay, actually, this is tomorrow's daf, so we'll stop here. Baruch Hashem. Everybody have a great day. Yashakayach to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.